Hello students, welcome back. So today it is module number 28, and as you know, in the previous class we were discussing about different types of material analysis techniques or elemental analysis techniques, in which we completed the discussion on neutron activation analysis. Okay, so this time we will enter into a new type of material or elemental analysis technique that is called Rutherford backscattering spectrometry, or it's abbreviated as RBS. Okay, Rutherford backscattering spectrometry. Already you are familiar with Rutherford scattering, which you are studied in your school level, in which alpha particle scattering we discuss using a gold target. Okay, we have a gold foil target on which alpha particles are radiated. So they scatter in different angles, and from the angle of scattering, we get certain presumptions on the structure of atom. Okay, so this idea we have already, and making use of this basic idea, we have developed a technique, a very advanced, delicate technique, with which different materials or different elements contained in a sample or in a specimen can be easily identified. Both in terms of quality and quantity wise we can identify. So as such an advanced techniques we are going to study in this module. Okay, so we have a brief introduction, then we will discuss what is the principle or and the mathematical formulations involved in the Rutherford backscattering spectrometry that will be dealt with in the kinematic equation part, and what is the essential experimental aspects of this spectrometry technique, and certain technical terms like energy straggling and the typical NRBA spectrum, how it looks like, what are the different physical parameters which affects the spectrum formation in RBS. These all are the essential discussion, and this is the whole technique we will discuss in two separate modules. Okay, so with this discussion, with this introduction, let us move on to the detailed discussion on RBS. So before that, it would be fine to know something about elastic and inelastic scattering. We know in a mechanical collision how we will distinguish between elastic and inelastic scattering. Okay, so first let us see elastic scattering. We call a scattering as elastic. Then in a mechanical collision between two or more particles, if there take place no internal excitation of the colliding partners, then we call it a elastic scattering. That means when two particles collide each other, of course their energy may get exchanged. One of them may get some energy, one of them may get some more energy. So more or less they will exchange energy, but there should not be any internal excitation. That means after the collision, the energy should exist still in the mechanical form. Okay, if that is not happening, we can say that some energy has got utilized in the internal excitation. So the internal excitation may be in the form of nuclear excitation, and that may be in the form of atomic excitation. All possibilities are there. Okay, so that kind of internal excitation should not be there, and they must satisfy the law of conservation of energy. So that means the kinetic energy of the particles are said to be conserved. Okay, that means total kinetic energy before and after collision should be same. Okay, then there is no question of a internal excitation. And then what we can do, the scattered energy at a certain angle can be measured, and that can be related to their mass number. Okay, so anyway, this technique we are making use in our RBS spectrometry also. Okay, now see, Uh, Whereas in inelastic scattering, there is a net loss of kinetic energy among the particles involved. So that is why we call it inelastic. That is the reason for calling them inelastic. Okay, uh, see now again there are few more differences. In inelastic collision, kinetic energy goes into the internal excitation of the particles. So that is what I told you. And that can be either in the atomic domain or in the nuclear domain. Okay, internal excitation can be either in the atomic form. That what does it mean? Excitation in the atomic domain means electron can go from some particular energy level to higher energy level. That is called atomic excitation. And somewhere it may be in the nuclear excitation. That means, as already we discussed about it, in the nucleus, the nucleons are in are their own discrete energy levels. So once a particle or a photon interact with the nucleus, the nucleons can go to any other discrete energy levels. So that is what is called nuclear excitation levels. So there are all possibilities that depends on the situation. And during de-excitation, the excitation energy can be lost either as quantum of photons or as particle energy. This is also a natural phenomena. After excitation, there will be de-excitation. So these all phenomena happens in case of inelastic scattering. That is another point. Example, we know that Pixie is such a phenomena, which is an inelastic scattering phenomena, where energy is lost and we get some X-ray photons. That is what we measure. The type and energy of the outgoing radiation enable us to identify and understand the particles involved. And of course, this is the basic essential principle of Pixie. But in RBS, we make use of the inelastic scattering phenomena. That means there take place no internal excitation. That means colliding particles, we can call partners, they mutually exchange energy in kinetic form only. So that kinetic exchange of energy or change in energy of these scattered particles can be measured, can be estimated. From the change in kinetic energy that we estimated, we get some information about the target particles. So we have projectile here, we have target here. Understand? Projectile and target. Projectile hits on the target, thereby some energy of the projectile is lost. So this loss in energy, okay, this loss in energy can be estimated or measured using some measuring device. So that loss in energy is pointing or giving us some clue regarding the target. It is giving us some clue regarding the targets. So that is the spirit of this technique. Okay. So in fact, this is involved from Rutherford's scattering phenomena, scattering experiment, where we usually talk about forward scattering only. We don't discuss about backward scattering here, but specifically we are concerned with the backward scattering of the projectile. Okay, so backward scattering will have the maximum loss. That is the spirit of the theory. Okay, maximum loss means maximum accuracy in the measurement. So backward scattering is focused, not the forward scattering. Usually we discuss in mechanics only about the forward scattering. And it is based on the classical elastic scattering of charged particle in a central force field. So here we have nucleus. So there is a positive electrostatic field around the nucleus. So that is a field. And the incoming particle, that may be usually positive particle, positively charged particle. So there will be some Coulombic repulsive interaction. Understand? Positively charged nucleus produces a central force field in which incident particles are scattered off by Coulombic repulsive force. That is the basic thing. So essentially the force is Coulombic, that too in the repulsive mode. Because incident projectile is a positively charged particle and the target nucleus is positively charged. So there is a Coulombic repulsive force. And particles scattered from the sample to an angle are detected by a solid state surface barrier detectors. So we have a detector, particles scatter in certain angle, maybe 180-degree angle, exactly backward, or some other angle other than 180, maybe 150, 140, 130. Any angular scattering, you can rotate your detector in a circular track as shown in the figure. So by rotating the detector in the circular track, you can detect the particles scattered from the sample. Understand? Particles scattered from the sample can be detected at any angle. So an energy can be measured. So in a collision, a certain amount of energy is lost, transferred to a recoiling particle. Who is recoiling? The recoiling particle is the target atom. And the scattered ion emerges with an energy that depends on the angle of scatter and on the mass of the scattering. Two parameters are there. One is theta, angle of scattering. One is the mass of the target. So we can make some parametric equations. Understand? So incident beam collide with the target atom and scatter backward into the detector system where energy of the projectile is measured. So that is what is there. We have a detector here. Its duty role is to just measure the energy of the incident projectile by some form. This also measure the intensity of the incident particles. So flux is also measured. So particle energy measured and flux is also measured. Number of particles incident on the detector. So during collision, energy is transferred from moving particle to the stationary atom. So here energy exchange takes place. Understand? Because projectile is coming, energy is exchanged. As a result, target nucleus also undergo recoil. Projectile nucleus undergoes some scattering. So we take into account the scattered particles, energy and intensity. And reduction of energy of the scattered particle depends upon. So this is a very important point. Reduction of energy of the scattered particle depends upon the mass of the incident particle and target particle, which provides the identity of the target atom. So that is very important. That is what provide you the signature. So see what is happening in fact. So we have a projectile here. So this is the projectile whose mass is m1 and which is colliding on the target with a velocity v0. Okay, with a velocity v0 it is colliding. So after collision, what is happening? Your target is of mass say m2, which recoils with some velocity v2 at an angle phi. So that angle is called a recoiling angle. Understand? So phi is the recoiling angle that is measured with reference to the x-axis. So this is the forward axis. With reference to that, we are measuring the recoiling angle, and the projectile is getting scattered. Projectile is scattered at an angle theta. That is also clear from the figure, and which is happening with the velocity v1. Okay, so this is the picture. So we have m1 projectile incident with a velocity v0. We have m2 target scattered recoiled with a velocity v2, and projectile scattered with a velocity v1 at an angle. So this is a visualization of the phenomena in a symbol format. Now what we will do, we will apply some laws of mechanics and we will derive an expression for the energy of the scattered photon, and incident photon energy we can find out. It will be simply half m1 v0 square, and we will find out what is the value of v1. Okay, v1 we have to find out using the laws of mechanics. v2 can be also find out applying, because this is a what is called elastic scattering. So all fundamental conservation laws in mechanics can be applied here, and we will get the value of v1. Okay, energy of the scattered particle. That is our purpose. Don't forget, our purpose is to measure the energy of the scattered particle. So once you know the energy of the scattered particle, you get a lot of information regarding the mass of the target nucleus. Mass of the incident nucleus we know very well, but we don't know. This is also an unknown quantity. So the M2 we can find out by knowing V1. Okay, so this is what we are going to do now. See what is done. So we have a incident particle, so whose energy is half m1 v0 square. Okay, so this is the kinetic energy of the incident particle. So if you apply the law of conservation of energy, so after collision, what should happen? This total kinetic energy should be distributed among the projectile and the target. So we have half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. This is the picture after collision. Energy got distributed among scattered particle and recoiled target. Okay, suppose now you apply the what is called law of conservation of momentum. You can apply one along the horizontal axis, along the positive axis, and one along the vertical axis. Okay, so, because the momentum is a vector quantity. So what we get? Initial momentum is only along the positive horizontal axis, that is m1 v0. And what about the momentum of the scattered particle? You can take the component in the horizontal direction. That will be simply m1 v1 cos theta. m1 v1 cos theta. Theta is this angle, scattered angle. Similarly, component of this along the horizontal direction will be m2 v2 cos phi, because this is a phi. So we got the momentum conservation along the horizontal axis. Similarly, along the vertical axis, because initially there is no momentum in the vertical axis, so 0. After collision, we have a component along the vertical axis, that is m1 v1 sin theta. Okay, its vertical component will be m1 v1 sin theta, and target atoms or vertical component will be m2 v2 sin phi. So we get 0 equal to m1 v1 sin theta plus m2 v2 sin phi. Okay, so once we have this, it's a matter of simple algebra to solve this for v1 by v0. What is v1? Velocity of the projectile after collision. What is v0? Velocity of the projectile before collision. Okay, so usually this is done by taking the momentum conservation equation. We have two equations, one for horizontal, one for vertical. Just rearrange equation 1 and square it. Similarly, rearrange equation 2, square it. You can combine it together. Once you combine, just rearrange, you will get this equation. m1 square into v0 square minus 2v1 v0 cos theta plus v1 square equal to m2 v2 whole square. And again, you have the law of kinetic energy principle. We already at the beginning we have written it. So cancelling all the 1 by 2's, you get m1 v1 square plus m2 v2 square equal m1 v0 square. Okay, so you can make some replacement here because we have m2 v2 square here. So by doing that replacement, by replacing m2 v2 square like this, again you make some modification in the equations. So finally we will get an equation like this: a1 v1 square plus m1 v1 square plus m2 v1 square minus 2m1 v1 v0 cos theta plus m1 minus m2 v0 square equal to 0. So now you divide the entire equation with v0 square. So once you divide the entire equation with v0 square, you get a very compact form. It is now a quadratic equation in terms of v1 by v0. You have a x square plus bx plus c form, where x replaced with v1 by v0. Understand? So a quadratic equation can be easily solved with there's a standard format. Okay, you have the standard format. If you apply the standard format, you get the value of what is called v1 by v0. You get the value of v1 by v0 simply by making use of the quadratic solution for x. Minus b plus or minus square root of b square minus 4ac by 2a. You get that v1 by v0 equals m2 square minus m1 square sin square theta all raised to 1 by 2 plus m1 cos theta by m1 plus m2. Since this is b1 by b0, there is no harm in multiplying with a m here, mass, both in numerator and denominator, and even with a 1 by 2, you get a half m v1 square by half m v0 square. So identically, you have to square the right hand side also. You squared it. Okay, you can see a 2 here. So this ratio is actually called like kinematic factor. So kinematic factor is the ratio of the energy of the scattered projectile to the energy of the incident projectile. Okay, hope you understood it. Kinematic factor is the ratio of the energy of the scattered projectile U1 to the energy of the incident projectile. Anyway, you know the energy of the incident projectile because you got this particle from accelerator by passing through certain magnetic focusing system. So E0 is well known, okay, and E1 is also known to you because this is what is measured in the detector. You have a silicon surface value detector in which energy of the scattered projectile can be measured. So once it is measured, M2 can be found. M2 is the mass of the target nucleus. So this is the general format for finding mass M2. Now you can simplify it because we are exclusively discussing backscattering program. In a backscattering, your scattering angle is exactly 180 degree. So sine 180 is 0 and cos 180 is -1. You can replace your sine theta and cos theta here. So that will lead you to what is a very compact, very beautiful equation like this. Your kinematic factor now becomes simply m2 minus m1 divided by m2 plus m1 all square. Okay, I am leaving the solution of this equation to you. Okay, you test it yourself and convince the beauty of this equation. Just replace the values and get these beautiful results. So very useful result. This is a very useful result. If one can use it for finding kinematic factor, thereby mass m2. Mass m2 is our ultimate purpose. Okay, so you can define kinematic factor as the ratio of the energy of the scattered particle to the incident particle. Okay, E1 by E0, and K depends on mass of the incident and scattered target particle. This is obviously clear from the equations. Understand? So from the equation it is clear. It depends on M2. So by knowing K, there is some outlet, there is some pathway by which you can measure the mass M2, target particle mass. So these are the typical way to measure masses. Okay, there are standard graphs are available, calibration graphs are available. These are drawn for certain given or well-known projectiles. Very good graph. This one is a highly informative graph. In fact, graph is drawn for different type of projectile: hydrogen ion, helium ion, lithium ion graphs. And target mass is also shown here for different masses. What is the value of kinematic factor? So this is called a calibration table or a calibration graph. This graph is usually provided by manufacturers for the machines they develop. So once you have the calibration graph, suppose you got some k value for certain targets. So that k value you can plot here. You will get the mass of the target atom which you are on, which is of interest to you. Okay, any target. So just to measure the kinematic factor from your device, you plot it here by projection. Okay, by projection method, the mass of the target can be formed. Okay, and these are given for 3 different type of projectiles, and you may get from other companies calibration graph for different other projectiles. That's not. It's a matter of simple search only. So I hope the technique and its methodology is clear to you. Okay, data analysis, how this is done. Okay, and now come to some remarks on the instrumentation part. How this is done. Usually charged particles like alpha ray, lithium ion, carbon ion, oxygen ions are accelerated in a suitable accelerator. Usually pelletron is used or Van de Graaff accelerator is used, from which you get requisite ions. And usually this is passed through even through a tandem Van de Graaff accelerator. So you know the role of a tandem Van de Graaff accelerator. Making use of a tandem accelerator, you can multiply ionize the projectile. Suppose initially you get a lithium plus ion. By passing through a tandem accelerator, you can make it a lithium 2 plus ion, 3 plus ion, 4 plus ion, like that. Okay, multiple ionization is possible, and acceleration also, or particle get correspondingly energized. And such particles are passed through analyzing magnets to select the ion energy. We call it magnetic focusing. This is done to homogenize the energy of the incident particle. Homogenize means we need a projectile of a definite energy. We don't want a projectile of any arbitrary energy. That is of no use. So energy of the incident particle should be well, thoroughly, precisely known. Only then it can be used in the spectrometric process. So through passing through certain magnetic focusing system, magnetic filtering system, you can say, energy of the incident particles are filtered and exactly measured before collision. And a narrow collimation ion, and the same ion beam is passed through certain magnetic focusing system, and that is collimated, just like in a spectrometer. What we do here also, particle is collimated into a narrow beam and bombarded to the target, and the target is kept in a extremely high vacuum system, 10 raised to minus 6 or less than that. Okay, so that is very important, because this projectile should not collide with the air molecules or any other extraneous particles. So vacuum is inevitable, and the material to be analyzed is usually mounted at the center of the RBS. That is usually mounted, fixed. That fixing system is called a target holder. Usually a ladder system is used. In a ladder system, you can fix a number of targets together, and each one can be successively irradiated with the beam. Understand? We usually don't do the experiment for a single target. We usually do the process for multi-targets, because this is a very costly affair. So number of targets are initially set up, fixed, and irradiation is done successively. So for which we use a ladder system. And at the back side of the target, usually a Faraday cup will be maintained, just like in a Pixie instrumentation we have seen. That is used to measure the total amount of charge particle incident on the target. So Faraday cap is usually connected with a charge integrator. So charge integrator will add up the total amount of particles incident on the target. So that is required for our final calculation. Okay. So elastically scattered particles are detected using silicon surface barrier. Okay, that is a typical procedure that we are well aware about it. Detected signals are processed, and a pulse height spectrum is obtained on a multi-channel analyzer. Detector and the associated electronic circuits are calibrated on a standard radioactive source which emit alpha particles. Okay. So using a standard source, usually calibration is done. Calibration is done to standardize the device. Okay, because we should know for a particular energy projectile where the spectrum should be formed. That should be well known, or precisely known prior to the actual beginning of the experiment. So for this, pre-calibration is done, in which a standard source is used, by using which measurements are done and plots are drawn. Such a plot I have shown you earlier. Okay. So using calibration curve, the energies of different peaks in the spectrum can be easily calculated. So we have discussed it, and this provides the information on the mass number. Okay. From the plot or from the graph, you get information about kinematic factor, and from kinematic factor you can draw in the information regarding the target atom. Okay, so spectrum will give you the energy of the scattered particle. So that spectrum enable you to calculate the mass of the target atom. So detector plays a very important role. So detector should be highly sensitive, highly precise, accurate. So for which we use a surface barrier detector or semiconductor detector. They are usually kept in liquid nitrogen or hydrogen at cryogenic temperatures in order to avoid noises, and the energy measurement is done. These procedures are well thorough to you. Already we discussed in case of neutron activation analysis. Hall electron pair formation takes place, and that charge can be counted using a counter, and signal from the detector in the form of voltage pulses. So such pulse heights can be measured. So according to the pulse height, you can classify them into different, pulse height analyzer. So this, according to the height of the pulse, they store in different channels. Okay, pulse heights according to so along the horizontal axis, depending on the pulse height, it is stored at different points. Okay, so energy height depends on height. According to height, they are stored at different channels. So that will give you an idea about the energy of the incident particle. Understand? Energy of the incident particle can be obtained from the position of the pulse on the axis. You can see in the plot, you have a gold target, you have a silicon target, carbon target. They emit projectiles with a different energy. Accordingly, they are marked on the spectrum. So from the energy, you can easily identify what is the target. Okay. Here we have non-samples, gold sample, silicon sample. From non-sample, for non-sample, the spectrum is low. Okay, so the pulse height analyzer stores pulses of a given height in a given channel. Channel numbers are calibrated in terms of pulse height, and hence there is a direct relationship between channel number and energy. And count measurements. This is the equation used in an absolute measurement. This is the total. N is the total count, and I is the incident particle. Okay, and T is the time for which the radiation is taken place, and S is for the target area. You have pasted a thin film, so its area is denoted with S, and NT you can see is the number of atoms of the targets. Okay, this is also an unknown quantity, and T is an unknown quantity. Understand? And d sigma by d omega is called Rutherford scattering cross section at the angle theta. The physical significance of this is very clear to you. Okay, this shows you it is give you a measure of the probability of interaction between the projectile and the target. D sigma by d omega, and omega d is called a solid angle subtended by the detector at the center of the target. This is a three-dimensional quantity measured in steradian, and eta is a correction factor. Eta is a efficiency, detector efficiency, and T is called correction factor, because entire particles falling on the target, falling on the detector cannot be measured. Some will be lost. So that lost factor is accounted with a T here. Okay. So this is the equation used for absolute measurement actually. And there is a term called resolution. A resolution is a quality of the device. Okay, means how exactly, how separately two adjacent peaks can be shown by a detector. Okay, so the more the separation ability, higher the resolution of a device. Okay, so resolution is the ability of an instrument to distinguish between two types of target atoms that differ in their masses by a small amount of time. Here you can see, suppose you have a target which contains chromium and iron, and it is exposed to RBS. So RBS spectrum give you two peaks. Sometimes that looks merged. Okay, sometimes that may be separated. So if it is giving separate peaks, we say that instrument is having very good resolution. Sometimes may be merged closely, very closely. So by using appropriate software techniques, computer analog techniques, you have to separate it. There are peak separation techniques by which peaks can be separated. Sometimes they may be too close too much close so that they cannot be separate. Then we say that the device resolution is very low. And this resolution depends on the ability of the device to resolve the corresponding energy difference delta E2 in terms of the energy of the backscatter particle. Because every for chromium target and iron target, they have its own energy loss. When target hits the chromium nucleus, energy loss may be different. When the same when the another projectile hit the iron target, the energy loss may be different. So if the energy loss for chromium and iron are very close, then the resolution will be very small. So you have to make that energy loss as high as possible. That is why we always depend on the backscattered particles, not other one. Okay, backscattering will have the highest loss of energy. So that is inferred by the resolution. These are the type of plots we in fact expect. Ideally, an RGX spectrum should looks like this, but this never happens. Okay, you don't get a line spectra, you get some broad spectra. Okay, with having some finite width, it looks like a Gaussian. We call it Gaussian peaks because it's giving a Gaussian type of curve. So they have finite width. The reason for this width is that particle undergo what is called energy straggling. That means the all particle that enter into the target after entering the target, they must collide with the target atom and they scatter off. So they have to pass through some bulk of the material. So in their forward and backward journey, they may lose some amount of energy. Forward journey they lose energy, backward journey return. Okay, return path also they lose energy. There's a rate of change of energy because they have to penetrate through the material. So there is a delta E by delta X. So this rate of change of energy may be different for different type of particles, different projectile particles. So that is accounted with the energy strategy. Okay, this is a statistical parameter. An energetic particle that moves through a medium loses energy via many individual encounters. Okay. Any projectile, when they pass through the targets, they have to undergo number of infinite number of collisions. So in every collision, they lose some amount of energy. So that loss may not be same for all particles. That may be slightly different for different particles. So that is why spectrum is getting not as a line. Instead, it is getting as a broad patch, a Gaussian peak we are getting. Such a discrete process is subjected to many statistical fluctuations. As a result, identically accelerated particles which have same initial velocity will not have same energy after passing through a thickness delta T. So they have loss, different extended loss is there. So energy loss delta E is subjected to statistical fluctuation because each and every particle address or encounter different type of atmosphere inside the material. We cannot always predict that all particles are addressing or encountering same ambience or same environment. Okay, just like when you come from home to the college, each one of you have different problems. Okay, different encounter different type of situations. Okay, all of you are not coming to the college by encountering in a daily practice encountering same kind of events. Different people will address different type of situations in buses, in vehicles, or in roads, or in any pathway. You may address different type of situations. So same kind of situation is mentioned here, referred here. So that is what is called a statistical fluctuation. So this phenomena we found with the word straggling energy sign. So spectral width is basically, or spectral width for different type of particles are different. That is due to the energy straggling. That is picturized in the figure. Okay. Energy straggling places a restriction on the precision with which energy loss can be measured. So energy straggling also leads to some inaccuracy in the prediction of the target atom. So how we are affected? Because we are interested in measuring the difference in the energy of the incident and scattered particles. Difference in the energy of the incident and target particles. incident and scattered particle. So due to energy struggling, there may enter some error in this measurement. So when there is an error in this measurement, that leads to an error in the prediction of the target atom. Suppose instead of carbon, you may be predicting nitrogen. Understand? Instead of carbon, you may be predicting oxygen. So that kind of error has to be minimized or eliminated completely by accounting this energy straggling. So in order to minimize this straggling problem, target is made as thin as possible. Target is made as thin as possible. Then energy straggling problem can be minimized. So light particles such as protons and helium lose energy primarily by encountering with the electron in the target. So we don't use such projectiles. So hope the ideas are clear. You at least go to the video twice, and you also make reading of the related literature thoroughly, because there is a lot of conceptual things in this particular technique. So you understand both the theoretical part and experimental part thoroughly. So here is the question now. Explain the concept of energy straggling in RBS. Okay. And what is the effect of energy straggling on RBS spectrum? Okay, I explain you the physical aspects of this straggling and how it affects. You can even make a email internet searching to get more idea on energy straggling and prepare a brief A4 size page report on this assignment. Okay, each one of you make a unique report on this question. Okay, so with these comments, let us stop today. And in the next schedule module also, we will continue the discussion on Rutherford backscattering spectroscopy. Okay, there are many other related aspects on Rutherford backscattering spectrometry. So till then, goodbye all of you.